Hello, guys and girls, boys and ghouls. So I'm creating a video here, a screencastify video, just to kind of give some tips on editing images. I wouldn't say that this is a how to edit images, how to edit an image or images, because editing images is very stylized, right? It's very subjective. It depends on you as a photographer. It depends what image you're going for to begin with. It depends on exposure, contrast, style, mood, and a ton of other things. But basically, what idea did you have in mind when you were taking this picture? So I can't think for you, but this is my interpretation of those images, and so I'm going to show you how I edit some of those that I usually, some of y'all's, which I usually do on a weekly basis. So first off, we are in Lightroom, and I'm in the develop mode. You can see right here that's lit up. There's also library mode, which is more for organizing. I can look at a bunch of my images at one time. I can select images all at once. Oops. Okay. So, but I'm going to go into the develop mode, and that's where I can actually tweak the images. Right, I could do things like crop, contrast, things of that sort. So what I've done is put up an image, all types of images that I put from our themes folder, mostly all types of images, so that we can get a little taste of how to edit or tips on editing different types of images, different exposures. So one thing I'm looking at right now is I'm looking at this poll. That's kind of like a clear indication that it needs to be cropped a little bit, straightened, and then also these whites are like super blown out. So maybe the exposure needs to come down a little bit. So first off, in order to crop an image and straighten it out, you can hit this tool right here up top, right? And if I am going to crop an image, I basically pull whatever corner I want and move it that way. And there's a whole bunch of details I can talk about this, but I'm just going to say, hey, let's keep it this way. And let's say if I don't want that, I can just click on the middle. I can move that image around. Once I'm ready, I hit enter. Now my image is cropped. So I'm just going to go back to the original image. Really what I want to do though is straighten it out. So I click on that same tool and I hover right around a corner on the outside, and it's hard to see, but there's a curved arrow. I'm able to click and hold down and then move that curved arrow, and I'm seeing a grid, which helps me straighten things, but also I'm actually seeing the image straighten out. Okay, of course, notice that right here, we get some of our image cropped out. I talked about that last time. If the image is really crooked, you crop out a lot of information, which might be information that you needed at the beginning. So hit enter, sas, there it is. All right, and then now I'm gonna go to exposure. It's a little bright. So I'm gonna go exposure down. Oops, sorry, I'm blind. That's contrast. Exposure's up here, right? And I would just use a keyboard going down, going in small chunks instead of accidentally going whoosh, right? So I'm going to go down to about that. I still feel like I need to straighten this out a little bit more. So I'm going to go back over here, go to my corner, tweak it a little bit, enter, and I feel a little bit more satisfied with that. Contrast. Contrast is how dark it makes your darks dark and your brights bright, right? The opposite is nothing is really dark or bright, and so it looks a little muddy. So without a lot of contrast, you get this very muddy image, which you might want to go for sometimes. It depends on your style, right? Now, if I want a little bit more contrast, it's going to make the image pop a little bit more. You can see the difference there, right there. Really, like, didn't mess with the contrast. Let's say contrast up to about 20, 25. I'm going to let go. It's hard to see how much it changed there, so I'm just going to go back and undo it, and you're going to see the difference. Here we go. Right? Definitely doesn't pop as much as before. So I'm going to keep it there. These whites right here, really white. So I can actually go to the highlight tool and scroll it down. And that tweaks the highlights a little bit. Once again, it's hard to see the change, so I'm going to undo it. Check out these colors right here. Boom, right? So it's really easy to like overdo it. But we don't want to overdo it because you can see the image start to deteriorate, starts looking funky. The other thing here is these are white, so I can also tweak the white slider over here, right? Although it just starts looking really unnatural. All right, so I'm done with that image. I'm not really going for like print quality yet. It's just something to show y'all. I still want that pull straightened out a little bit, so I'm going to tweak it again. I don't know. It's the end of the day, and my eyes are kind of jacked up. All right, here, a couple things I'm noticing right away. It's a little overexposed, too much color, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go to the exposure, just bring it down. Really nice. We're sort of seeing details that we hadn't seen before. Okay. And then I'm going to mess with the contrast. So it's really the two main things that we use. Okay. And say I go up to 33. And now I undo it. You can see the difference. Go up to 50. I undo it. You can see the difference. If I go up to 80 and undo it, you can see the difference. I can go up to 100. But that looks a little too much, right? A lot of times when we get really soft images where we have to increase the contrast, it's because it was in the shadows or the shade. If it's in direct sunlight, a lot of times you don't really need to tweak too much. All right, something that I can add to this image are these vignettes over here. Although I will tell you, careful when people start editing, they tend to overdo it and they use the vignette too much. It's a super rookie mistake that is very obvious once you start seeing a series or a bunch of images that person edited. So the vignette's going to give kind of a darkened rim, it's going to darken the corners. That makes everything in the middle pop a little bit more because now this is framed in a little bit of darkness. I can show you. So this is a little bit, right? It's actually quite a lot. Medium, right there. We're already kind of overdoing it. Heavy, definitely. You could definitely see that the vignette was applied to this. And what we want to do is we want to make edits that are very subtle, meaning they're not super obvious, but they're increased or they're done enough to make the image improve in quality and look better. But when we go kind of crazy, when we go ham, it starts looking real corny, and people can tell what you're doing, and people can tell that you're just kind of like almost like filters when you use too many filters on an Instagram pic. So I'm gonna go to light, medium, maybe at the most. I'm gonna leave it right there. All right, next one. Oof, I like this image. Depth, right? We see layers, the foreground, the middle, the background. I'm liking this image pretty much already. And see, it's pretty straight. Maybe a little bit overexposed, so I'm gonna decrease the exposure, and then I'm just gonna see how that looks. Okay, that was maybe too much, so maybe go like 40. I'm gonna undo it to see the difference. I think 40 is pretty good. Maybe a little bit of contrast. Good. And this image is good already. Like I don't need to add this vignette to everything. It's real easy to get carried away because it makes it real moody. But like I said, it gets real corny after a while. Same thing. I'm gonna go down. It's basically the same image, so I'm gonna go down maybe about 0.40, about half a stop, increase to about 25, 30. And I'm just gonna move on. Like this. I like this. I feel like it can be straightened a little bit. And I feel like these highlights, these brights are a little too bright. So those are going to be my focus. So I'm going to go to this tool right here, click on it. Going to hover outside of the corner, click and hold down, and then bring it down to move the image. I'm going to use these lines to kind of help me because I'm blind. And I'm going to just hit enter. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit more. I don't know. A wee bit more. I think that's good. I'm going to increase the contrast right away. The exposure, I feel like it's good. Maybe a little bit less. Yeah. Okay. Increase the contrast. These highlights are a little too hot. So I'm going to decrease the highlights here. Okay, once again, it's easy to get carried away. So to see the actual difference, I'm going to undo it. Okay, so that helped a little bit. I don't mind it. And then maybe add a little vignette, maybe a little light. Yeah. Now I'm feeling like I moved this too much. Maybe I didn't, so I'm going to go back. All right, moving on. Boom. This image could use a little bit straightening, a little contrast. Maybe it's a little overexposed. Down a little bit. All right. I want to add a vignette to this because this is really bright. So sometimes the vignettes really help when our edges, the outside of the image is bright. So let's see what difference that makes. Okay, with it, without it. With it, without it. Maybe a little bit on the light side. Moving on. Let's get that image. So we're going to start just going through images that I know that are good examples. All right, here's another one. Very hot. When I say hot, it's very blown out. It's very bright. So immediately I want to decrease exposure about stop and a half, maybe more. I can already tell this image is going to be too bright. Okay, because I know I can already tell it's so bright that when we start decreasing the brightness and the whites here, we're going to start losing quality in the image because our tweaking is going to be so big. Our adjustments are so much. So let's try that out. And then either way, it's a good example of how things might look once you edit them too much. And, it's what we want to try to avoid. So these are like non-examples. And then we got good examples. Highlights, I'm going to bring them down. Okay. We can see a little bit more detail now up here. So I'm going to undo it so you can see how this detail disappears. Boom. Okay, so I'm going to bring it down. A lot of whites in there, so I'm going to bring down the whites. Okay. It's not bad, but these, very bright parts tend to start to look kind of weird after a while. But that image is usable, so I'm going to move on to the next one. Maybe add a little bit of contrast. At 2025, boom, move on. Okay, I like this one. I like this first one. A little bright, and decrease the exposure. Ooh, nice. We start seeing that color from the sky. Too much, right? Too much. I'm gonna pull it back. I kind of like that whiteness though. All right, and then gonna mess with the contrast. Increase that. I'm gonna say I'm done. Boom. Okay, same thing. Decrease the contrast. I mean the exposure. Decrease the contrast. Maybe a little bit of shadows. Okay, moving on. Nice. So we can see this image is a little hot, a little bright, a little overexposed, and then based off of this fence line, we can see that it needs to be tweaked. There's that fence line. There's the edge of this house. So I'm going to start with that. I tend to start with straightening images or cropping them first. And click on that. Hover around my corner. Click. Slide it over. I'm using these lines to help me out. Say about there. Hit enter. Sass. Maybe a little too much. All right. All right. The other part was that it's too bright, so I'm going to go ahead and decrease that. Going down to about one stop. What's kind of tough is that he's in the shadows. Cute, not really. And then this is all blown out. So this is where vignette might help. Okay. What I can also do is increase the shadows, which is going to be right here. And move it up. Helped a little bit. Now it's looking kind of muddy, so I'm going to up the contrast. And this is still super bright on the edges. So I'm going to go a little bit lower on the highlights, a little bit lower on the whites, not too much. And then because it's the edges that are blown out, this is a good time to use the vignetting. It's going to go to about medium. So you look at that difference. Nothing, medium, nothing, heavy, nothing, medium. Let's go medium. Now the other part of this is that this little wee lad is tiny, and we got a bunch of extra information on here that we don't care about. Most of the important images right here, so I'm going to crop that in. I'm going to click. I'm going to hold this down and bring it in. Right, that's not going to be my final image. I can move this around. That way I can maybe make this into like right in the middle. I'm not feeling that because the right side, there's a lot of white blown out image. Maybe we can do a rule of thirds going in this direction. And that way we get rid of that blown out part. Boom. I like that. I like that a lot better. It's not an award-winning edit, right? But it's definitely an improvement. So I can show you the difference. Let's go to there's a way that I should be able to see the differences side by side. Just a second. Hold on. Alright, so it's going to be this view mode over here. So, loop. Before, after, there it is. That way we'll be able to compare. Let's do left, right, or top, bottom. Boom. Look at this up here compared to this one. Not bad. Oops. I unedited that. Redo. So you have these redo tools up here. I just I undid my mistake. Okay, so let me go back into view. Let me get rid of this before, after. Nothing. All right. Bam. Ooh, another bright one. So I'm going to decrease the exposure. Not bad. I'm going to straighten this out a little bit. These whites are super blown out. So we have highlights, bring those down. We have whites, bring those down. It's a little muddy in there, so I'm going to decrease the contrast. Okay, it's a little hazy too. So there's this dehaze option down here. Although you get crazy contrast with that dehaze option. Still a little crooked. I'll tweak it. All right, moving on. These brights are just going to be super blown out, and that's just kind of part of the problem with shooting at that time of day. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm liking this image. It's really crooked, so I know that if we move it, we're going to lose a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and crop this over like that. Not bad, still good. Okay. A little bright, so I'm going to decrease the exposure. Very good. Still a little bright. Bring these highlights down, bring these whites down. Get a bit of increase of contrast right there. Boom. Once again, we want to see a before and after. Let's see, do the shortcut. Boom. Cool. All right, move on to the next one. Skip that one. Okay, I like this one. Pretty good exposure, not too bright, not too dark. I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. Just a light vignette over here. Boom. Love it. Go on to the next one. Okay, same one. I like this. I'm gonna straighten this out. Okay, maybe a little bit more. Okay, a little contrast. A little light vignette. Boom. Moving on with my life. All right, this one. Let's skip it. Oh, this one's really good. All we gotta do is really, it's not too bright, not too dark. Just gonna increase the contrast a little bit. Boom. There you go. This one, same thing, just increase contrast. Do a little bit higher exposure. Same, increase the contrast. I will straighten this a little bit. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Let me go back to this. I gotta straighten these out. Real easy. Boom. Make it a little bit more, it's alright. Tweak it. Boom. A little bright. Bring the exposure down. Like it. We see that light coming through there. Dig it. Boom. Same with the next one. Adjust it. Still crooked. Okay, decrease the exposure. Love it. Dude, I think I feel like I straightened it a little too much. This needs a little bit of straightening. Boom. A bit higher contrast. Moving on. Cute. And the problem with this one is there's shadows and then there's really bright highlights. So I'm going to go ahead and start decreasing the highlights right here. Bring it down. I'll bring the whites down a little bit. Not bad. I'll bring the shadows up. Not too much. Get a bit of contrast there. Boom, boom, boom. Put down the exposure a little bit. It's nice. Again, look at that. Before, after. Ducks. Moment. I think he smells my cat on me. A little bit of contrast. Same. All right, guys. So I'm gonna stop there before it turns into a really long video. Or you know what? I'll just be quiet and I'll keep on showing you. Hey, see that little right there? I want to get rid of that, so I'm gonna crop that out. Boom. Maybe I want to move this from being a little bit to the left to maybe in the middle to maybe now being a little bit in the right. Kind of like that. Increase the contrast. All right, I'm gonna start moving through these real fast. Like that one, I would have maybe gotten down at a lower angle. Put a little vignette on there. Moving on. And just straighten this out. I can see it over here. So I'm just gonna cover around my corner. Okay, a little bit more, not too much. Boom, think that was too much. I like that a little bit better. Increase the contrast. Maybe a little bright, so I'm going to decrease exposure. Nice. And notice when I do that, it really brings out the blue and the clouds in the sky. But that's a little too much, so I'm going to bring it back. There we go. Like that too. Got the street sign, you got the street cars, the bridge in the back. Nice little information. Increase the contrast. Lower the highlights a little bit. Lower the whites a little bit. Okay. Now, if you feel like this is a little too orangey, this is where we got color temperature over here. So I'm going to bring this down. Okay. And yeah. So let's look before and after. See the color difference right there. I like this. Calm, serene, chill. I'm just going to strain that. Increase the contrast. Then move on. Random Sako. Increase the contrast. And a little bit of light vignette. Boom. I like this. Gonna strain it just a wee bit. Okay, maybe increase the contrast. That's good. Move on. Yeah, I like the blues in the sky. Too much, bro. Too much. go. There's a bird up there, which I didn't notice. Should straighten it a little bit. Okay. Nice. Put a vignette on that, like a medium. Increase the contrast. Done. Put a vignette. Moving on. Let's see. Can you read that? Yeah, pretty much. Let's straighten it out a wee bit. Like how this is kind of framed already in there. Increase the contrast. Move on. Like this. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna increase the contrast, bring it down a little bit, maybe add a little bit of green to it. So right here, I'm gonna bring this down a wee bit. Oh, too much. Maybe a little bit of light vignette, and I'm good. Let's look at a before and after. Before, after. Okay. Like I said, it's a different style. It's a different preference. This one on the right just looks different. Like this. Very good. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop right there. Hopefully this video helped you. It doesn't cover all the tools that you can use over here. Very powerful tools. But those are the main ones you're going to use. Like literally 95% of the time. So if you can learn those fairly quickly, you can already start editing all your work. All your work. Alright guys, I will see y'all soon.